What's up, everyone? This is Kronos, aka Adam, and I am back with another week in review for AEW. I'm not wearing a hat, so you're seeing my hair. I'm drinking scotch. The window is open. This is getting recorded late. It's getting posted late. This is going to be a very interesting show, but I felt I needed to get this out because I got to be consistent if I'm going to take this channel seriously. Anyway, so what I like to do, like I always do, is go over BTE, AEW Dark, and AEW Dynamite for the week of April 27th. There is a huge spoiler for BTE that there are possible new additions to the roster. So if you don't want to be spoiled and you want to skip just that portion of it, I'm going to have my time codes in the description so you can skip over that. As always, you can catch me on my social media there, both Instagram and Twitter, as well as like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Obviously, I need to build it up. I apologize in advance to absolutely no one, as Conor McGregor would say, because no one's actually watching this. Anyway, so what I'm going to be doing is going over my notes and just talk about all the different shows that happened during the week. So we're going to start off with BTE. The name of this was Message in the Sky. So episode 201. So it starts off with the Bucks sitting in Nick's front yard, and they thought they had nothing left to do. After episode 200, there was nothing there. There was nothing to do. They figured BTE was already over. As they're joking around, they look up in the sky, and then all of a sudden it breaks to a brand new intro that we have, both with live action and 8-bit graphics, some new footage from some of the most recent episodes of BTE, so it's a completely new intro. Always fun to see what they do there. So they went back to, they were also discussing their injuries as a result of the fight that they had in episode 200. Nick, unfortunately, is at now, according to doctors, at only 15% health. And Matt, obviously, because of the work that Nick did on his back, he's now going to have to sell this injury for another 2 years, apparently. We'll see what ends up happening. So we go to one of the running themes right now of the last few episodes is Luchasaurus and his missing tail. He's been looking around. He can't find it. He's been trying to reach out to people that he knew from his past, including someone like Taya Valkyrie because of her being married to John Morrison, who's now in WWE. Luckily, because she's an Impact, she still obviously is able to be on BTE with no issue, because I'm assuming that anyone on WWE would be banned from being on it. So we get a shot of Luchasaurus contacting PJ Black, who is a current ROH wrestler. I recently saw an interview of him, so I didn't really know of him, but as soon as I saw him, I recognized him from an interview I saw on, I believe, Wrestling Sheet Radio several months ago, that they were eating pizza. So I just knew who he was, and I got to look into him a little bit. He was in developmental at WWE. I think he was under Justin Gabriel, I think his name was. He now has this kind of holy man, witch doctor gimmick, and there is some kind of history between Luchasaurus and PJ Black from ROH back in, I believe, 2018. I don't know the full history. I don't follow Ring of Honor that much, so I'm not going to pretend like I do. But Luchasaurus contacts him. He's still looking for his tail. And Dr. Black, as he's called, says that he'll send him some potions, and that should be able to put him in a dream state where he'll be able to figure it out. Okay. Then we cut to Brandon Cutler starting a new challenge called the Kickout Challenge because he refuses to lose another match. So he gets Andrews and Lotto, who have been the proverbial jobbers for the last few episodes of BTE, to help them out with it, and they're just a bunch of different pinning combinations. He's kicking out. Finally, they pin him 1, 2, 3, and it ruins the challenge, and Brandon Cutler's back to being just a loser. Then we get a Killing the Business spoof. If you're not aware, Killing the Business is going to be a new book coming out from the Young Bucks, kind of like a biography, I guess an autobiography, on their lives of starting from backyard wrestling to the indies to where they are now at AEW, and one of their mottos was always they're going to kill the business, to change it, to make it evolve, not actually kill the business, because that would just be counterproductive for them. But the spoof actually involves Colt Cabana and how he kind of rode the coattails or kind of weaseled his way into AEW, and turns out his the bit that he's been doing with BTE, constantly getting in the way of Kenny Omega, and every scene that Kenny Omega was in was actually started out as an accident, and then I guess they found it funny, so now they just continued the bit to keep going forward, and he just basically kind of did did a voiceover for Killing the Business. So anyway, we're back to Luchasaurus. He receives the potions from Uber Gimmicks. He starts to trip and sees his mother, who talks about her titties. Sorry, for the kids. A dinosaur there. Now there's apparently a snake who is his adversary during it, saying that he needs to shit his pants. You see a shot of Taya Valkyrie, and then also during this trip he sees okay, yeah. So then he starts to go through these kind of mock meetings of how he used to have to try and explain his gimmick to different promotions, what his gear was, what his gimmick was, and how people didn't really understand it or didn't get it or didn't like it, whatever it was. So then he has to fight this snake, and then Super Panda shows up, who apparently was his tag team partner in bar wrestling and other independent promotions. He has to fight the snake, but he's actually losing. Super Panda shows up for the save. He's able to cut the head off the snake, and he wakes up from the dream because the snake keeps talking about shitting his pants. He goes, well, when was the last time I shit my pants? Panda Express. And I guess that's the next clue to finding his tail. Bizarre, but it's being the Elite. I've seen more bizarre. Then we go to a private party, and then last week someone tried to blow them up while they were practicing, trying to keep themselves in shape, in wrestling shape, and they're social distancing themselves, and they said, they're trying to figure out who this person was, and they said he was wearing a mask, and then Isaiah Cassidy happens to drop a medical mask, and Mark Quinn starts to think that he's the one who tried to blow them up, even though he was there, and then they have some kind of argument where Isaiah Cassidy walks out, so we don't know what's going to happen there. Then we cut back to the Bucks, who are discussing, and once again, as I said, this is spoiler, so spoiler alert. They look up in the sky and they see FTR, which, if you don't know, is Fear the Revival, Free the Revival, whatever you want to say, but it's indicative of the Revival, who were just recently let out of their WWE contracts, or I think their contracts actually expired. They were trying to get them signed to new contracts, but it turned out that they were not being used properly. They weren't happy there. I know that WWE was looking to really spend a lot for them, but as we've seen, recently with a lot of the releases, even signing them to big deals means nothing, because look at the OC, they were signed to a big deal, but as independent contractors, they were able to get let out. So anyway, that is for Being the Elite. Huge news. If this is actually the Revival are coming to AEW, they already have probably the best tag division in any promotion that I know of. Obviously, I don't know every promotion, but from what I've seen, both WWE, AEW, New Japan, the tag team division here is absolutely stacked, and the tag team champions of Kenny Omega and Hangman Page are not even like a real tag team, because they've only been tagging for a short amount of time, but the amount of tag team talent that they have in AEW is crazy, and just adding the Revival can put on some absolute banger matches, especially with the Young Bucks. There was a tweet back in the day, Matt Jackson had said, we're going to wrestle the Revival one day and everyone will rejoice, and it may actually come to fruition now. So we're going to jump to AEW Dark, and as I said, a lot of these are shorter now. They're no longer an hour long. They usually have 2 to 3 matches. This week, with Cody and Tony on commentary, we only had 2 matches. The first one was Jimmy Havoc versus Sean the Captain Dean, who's currently 0-1 in AEW. I believe he only wrestled on Dark recently. He trains currently at the Nightmare Academy with QT and Cody. He's actually a former Navy man. I guess that's where he got the nickname the Captain from. Havoc, starts out the match working over his arm. They actually shake hands, which, as a heel, as Havoc, was a little odd, but I guess maybe, as a, paying respect to his military service, especially right now, it's the right thing to do. Dean gets Havoc with a Japanese arm drag, which takes Havoc to the outside. Havoc then does both an arm drag and a suplex back to back of Dean into the turnbuckle, which was pretty brutal. Ends up finishing him off. Havoc finishes off Dean with a Fisherman DDT, which is now, I think, he's almost replaced his Acid Rainmaker. I mean, he still does it, but it looks like the Fisherman DDT seems to be his main finisher now. I don't know if the Acid Rainmaker, the Ripcord Lariat, is going to be maybe a setup or still another version of another finisher for him. We don't know. I haven't gotten to see him enough. So Havoc gets the win there. We then have the Best Friends with a tune-up of their match on Dynamite against Lee Johnson and Musa. I believe Musa, this might be his first match. Lee Johnson has been on a couple of matches now, obviously not winning any, but, being there. Chuck starts out working over Musa, who eventually tags out. Trent comes in as well, faces Lee. It just goes down to a slugfest. The Best Friends then double team Lee. Musa tags in, but Chuck takes out both of them. Trent goes for an outside dive on Musa. He spears Lee on the outside. They then hit the Soul Food half and half combination on Musa. They obviously got to give the people what they want, so they got the hug. And then they hit Storm Zero on Musa for the win. So that actually pretty quick. Like I said, this is going to be a quick review. That was AEW Dark. And now we're going to jump into Dynamite, where we had our two semifinals for the TNT Championship Tournament. We had Le Champion and Tony on commentary, and I gotta say, Jericho is just phenomenal on commentary. I mean, we need him there for as long as we can have him there. So they start out hot. They start out with Cody versus Darby Allin as the first semifinal in the TNT Championship Tournament. Cody obviously has the power advantage. Darby has the speed advantage. Jericho, while he does hate, Cody, always is providing great insight. Darby starts out with a La Magistra cradle for a 2 count. Cody tries to bridge out of a pin. Then it looks like he tweaks his knee. Darby then clips it. That seems to be the running theme for the match, is going after the knee of Cody. On the outside, they're both on the outside. Darby actually tries to go for a spear. And then Cody kind of moves out of the way, and Darby ends up spearing Brandy into the barricade. You can say whether or not Cody, saw him coming and knew that he was going to hit Brandy instead. But he made sure that Brandy was taken care of by Billy Gunn, who actually helped her to the back. And then he showed, a lot of aggression, a lot of anger, for Darby hitting his wife. So then Cody begins grinding down Darby with a lot of submission holds. Darby is able to fight back and get back to the knee. He actually hits a code red for a 2 count on Cody, but then transitions into a knee bar. He gets Cody in the Tree of Woe, where he does some kind of almost like a modified coffin drop in the corner. On the outside, Cody's on the outside going around and ends up getting hit with a shoe by Britt Baker, who's obviously very happy about it. I believe this actually stems from one of the other YouTube videos that they put out on their AEW YouTube channel called The Road 2, which is usually anywhere from 10 minutes, 8 to 15 minutes probably, about whatever's about to happen on the upcoming Dynamite episode. And this previous episode, obviously, if you've been following it, Britt Baker and Tony Schiavone have like this kind of love-hate relationship. And Tony was in the office and Britt was trying to talk to her. And then Brandy walked in, and Britt obviously saw that Brandy was walking and said, "Oh, I'll let you guys get back to it." Gets off the FaceTime and then starts texting Tony and really just trashing Brandy, not assuming that Brandy could see it, but it was coming up on Tony's computer. And Tony just said, "Let's just forget about it." So maybe there's some animosity between Britt and Brandy. So who knows if that's going to go anywhere. So Cody hits Darby with a release suplex and then into a disaster kick. Darby uses his own crossroads for a 2 count and then goes into a figure 4. So he's trying to use Cody's moves against him. Brandy ends up coming back, selling the injury, but comes back with a bottle of water. I don't get it. I actually thought for a second it could be something to the match. Even Jericho said, "What is that, acid or something like that?" I had no idea. Ends up not really figuring into the match at all. Cody takes a drink of it, and that's pretty much it. He ended up he tries to use the Acid Rainmaker. Speaking of Jimmy Havoc from from Dark, he actually tries to use a Acid Rainmaker on Darby Allin, but they're both down, selling the injuries. They're able to get back to their feet. Darby hits his flip over stunner. He tries a moonsault, but gets kind of like a lion salt, but gets caught by Cody into a crossroads for a 2 count. So they're really not protecting the crossroads anymore. Kind of weird that they're just so easily kicking out of it now. I know one of my friends actually does have a problem with that, and I do in certain aspects. Depends on the match. I think for a match like this, especially Darby doing it to Cody, I can see him kicking out of his own move. But once you start doing that, if it's not the finals for the championship, you're watering down the crossroads now. And you don't want it to become like the the skull crushing finale with a zigzag, for WWE reference. So Cody goes top for a moonsault, which we think it's a moonsault. He actually does the coffin drop, but Darby gets the knees up. Then he goes for his own coffin drop, which he lands, but as he's doing it, Cody starts to roll through and actually pins Darby, which I did not like the finish of this because Darby was trying to sell like he was giving the pin, but his shoulder, you could feel the way the angle was that his arm, that Cody's shoulders were not on the mat. Sorry, getting text messages. So you could see, what was going on there. So it was, the match itself was great, but the finish kind of, I didn't like that. So I mean, now we have Cody is now going to be in the finals at Double or Nothing. Now for the next semifinal, it's going to be Lance Archer versus Dustin Rhodes. So then we get part 2 is the Scorpio Sky vignette. How he connected with SCU, how he was the new guy and he was nervous, because Kazarian and Christopher Daniels are established stars, and what was he going to do? And once they came up with and if you follow Being the Elite and SCU, they had this gimmick where they used to do this bit where they would go to any town and say, this is the worst town I've ever been in, and they talk shit on the town, and it actually got them huge in popularity, and Being the Elite, with the exposure there, only helped it grow. And so now we go to an MJF promo, which his nail was now overhealed, but this went on a little too long, and I think it was a little too much. Then he nicked his neck, and he was wearing a neck brace. I get it, he can't be there because of the pandemic and everything going on, but we don't need to keep going with this. It starts to get a little cartoonish, but he did say he was going to be there next week, so we'll see what ends up happening there. We then follow up with a Wardlow versus Musa from AEW Dark, complete squash match. He does the dropping knee lift into the F10, over. Then we get another installment of the Bubbly Bunch, which is obviously the Inner Circle bit where they do kind of like a take on what they call now the Flim Flam Challenge, which is a take on TikTok. They debate over who won last week's, but Chris Jericho says he never wants them to fight, so he said, what, let's just have an old Manitoba melee. In which that each character punches the camera, and then it looks like whoever the next person is taking the punch and then hitting the camera themselves. There were several cameos by people outside the Inner Circle. I didn't get all of them, but I'll go through the ones that I did see. Peter Avalon, the librarian. We got Jungle Boy. We got Sonny Kiss, Luther, Chris Jericho's dad, Lou Ferrigno with a taser, Jason Mewes, Kevin Smith, Gabriel Iglesias, the comedian, Virgil, and of course Vicky Guerrero. I know there were a couple others. I just don't know who they were, so I don't want to pretend and say that I knew who they were. So then we get to our next match, which is Best Friends versus Kip Sabian and Jimmy Havoc in a no DQ match. A brawl erupts right away. We get a Tope con Hilo by Trent that takes out both men. Havoc then grabs a chair, and it looks like he's going to hit Trent, and he actually just throws it at Orange Cassidy, and just kind of knocks him out. Freshly knocked the F out, as Jericho would say, which is pretty funny. Havoc suplexes Chuck on chairs outside, which was pretty rough. Jimmy Havoc then throws a ladder at Trent in the corner, then slingshots him up into it as it's draped through the ropes. Kip kicks Trent in the back, which then goes into an eye poke by Havoc, which is pretty funny. We get a backstabber by Kip on Trent, and then Chuck breaks up the pinning attempt. We got Chuck with a rising knee strike into a chair into Jimmy Havoc's face. A double chair shot where they just throw the chairs at Jimmy Havoc, and then obviously giving the people what they want, the hug with the pan out. We get a soul food half and half combination on Kip Sabian, which only gets a 2 count. Chuck then gets thrown into a chair that he wedged into the ropes. We get a tornado DDT by Trent on Kip, a shining wizard into the chair, and Havoc breaks up the count there. Trent then he drapes a ladder between the ropes, is about to go from the top rope. Jimmy Havoc grabs his legs out from under him and he lands on the ladder. It was a brutal spot there. It looked really bad. Let's see. So then things start to get a little crazier, if it hasn't already. Jimmy Havoc then does a Death Valley driver onto chairs, and then there's a double stomp onto the chairs on Trent. And the chairs were kind of facing this way. It looked really bad. It looked like it hurt a lot. Chuck was able to come in there and break up the count. Havoc is slammed on chairs. Then Kip pile driven on a chair. Penelope Ford comes and breaks up the count. Chuck gets back body dropped on a ladder in the corner. Orange Cassidy finally returns, throws the chair at Jimmy Havoc. He avoids Penelope Ford, who ends up spearing Kip, kind of like what Darby Allin did to Brandy earlier. Cassidy then does a trust fall onto Kip and Ford. Chuck then hits an awful waffle on Havoc, which is kind of like a modified pile driver onto the chair for the win. So this was a brutal match. Obviously, there was a spot after where they were not happy about it, both Kip Sabian and Jimmy Havoc, and they're going to make everybody pay. So we'll see what ends up happening. We get a bit by Britt Baker at her dental office with her makeup artist Reba, which her name is actually Rebel. Rebel is kind of getting interviewed where she's kind of talking trash and then apparently gets a talking to, and then she starts putting over Britt. Britt then shows how to be a role model, and everything you're not supposed to do, turns out Tony Schiavone does or is believed to do, even if he has a snaggle tooth and he's extra fat or whatever it is. It's pretty funny. Our next match, we get Shawn Spears versus Baron Black. Apparently, Shawn Spears has won 4 of his last 5 matches up to that match. This isn't a very long match. Shawn Spears hits a C4, which is his version of the Death Valley driver, into a sharpshooter for the win. So now he's 5 out of his